Cool. So, going to talk about a little bit about Sushi Saga today, and more importantly, just kind of do a general review of where we're at. It sounds like some of you have uh, started and or finished that exercise already, so I practice already. So that's cool. And I'm hoping it sounds like a lot of folks have a pretty good handle on the mechanics of React right now, but we want to sort of focus on fluency, and I guess that means kind of exploring where what things are slowing us down. And sometimes that's just a matter of practice, but sometimes there's stuff to actually talk about. So yeah, I'd like to open it up to you all first. Tell me a little bit about where you're feeling a little bit hung up on this one specifically, but in general.
So on this one, um, the part that I struggled with the most was like clicking the sushi and having that, move the plate to the table and like remove the sushi.
Mm,
Um, what I I'll admit I ended up just peeking at the solution to figure out how to get that. Because what I really wanted to do was do like an on click, like, you know, and then be like, is it clicked or is it not clicked, and have that set state for things. Um, and the solution had some other stuff happening instead of that, that I kind of just copied so that I could move on. Um, and so I'm not really understanding that piece where it's like adding a I guess like it looks like to me like it's adding a key value
mm.
thing, of like eaten or not eaten that doesn't exist in the JSON file. And so that piece was confusing. Um, and then I guess I get thrown off again. As sometimes I'll see like I'll want to throw, hit like sushi.name, sushi.everything,
Mhm.
and then pass those down. And then I see, they'll do like, I guess they destructure it and do like const, like all of the keys equals sushi.
Yeah.
And that confuses me as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's a lot of good stuff to talk about. Awesome. I have notes on that. What else we have?
The thing that hung me up for a while was I was doing instead of because I had always been doing if else when we were doing JavaScript, so I never did just like the question mark for true or false. So I don't fully understand how that syntax worked. And
Mhm.
then because I thought that only the question mark worked in React, not the if else, but then I just tried an if else and that worked just fine. So that hung me up for a while.
I'm curious about that. Uh, can you say a little bit more about how you're using the if else?
It was for uh when they clicked a sushi, if they had enough money, then get rid of it. So I did if current money is greater than or equal to the price of the sushi, then let them click on it. If not, then alert them they don't have enough money.
Are you doing that in like the function or in the JSX?
In the sushi.js component.
Right, but but not in the JSX code itself, the part that's returning the HTML.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah.
In the
Yeah,
functions.
that's yeah, I can address that now. So in the JSX between the in the curly brackets there, those curly brackets require you to, or they don't require you to, but they will return whatever the value is of what's inside there. And if you use an if then inside that in the JSX, um, if then doesn't have a value, so it won't return anything, so you won't see anything. And that's where we want to use the ternary, because the ternary or the question mark or the colon, that returns that value. So that's what you need to use inside that curly brackets, because that's expecting an expression that returns a value. Outside, it's just JavaScript, so you can use whatever you like.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. What other stuff we want to talk about?
I would like to second that. I have I like understand the ternary, but I feel like sometimes it's kind of like where exactly to not so much as where exactly to put it is like the proper way to set it up to do what I really want it to do.
Mhm.
And I feel like I get hung up on that a lot.
So can you give me an example of a place like that?
Oh God. Um, I think I wouldn't be able to give you an exact example.
Or even if you have some code you want to show, you can share screen and take.
Mm, let's see. I can. It would take me a little while to find it. Give me a second.
Well, right, and anything else we want to focus on?
I had like a best practices question about passing callback functions like through the React components because like I learned it and I think it's really cool like treating functions as objects, so I'm just using it all the time now. So I didn't like I feel like that's probably not the best plan, but I mean if it works.
Yeah, if it works, it works. um, where would you be using it that you're not feeling great about it, or that smells wrong, I guess?
I mean, like when I end up chaining it through like three different parent components.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the sort of that's the uh, state in React versus like using a data store kind of thing.
Right.
Uh, the state in React components is really intended to, you know, keep the state of that component, not to deal with data. And that's a subtle, like kind of mushy distinction sometimes. But when you come across that, where you're just like the only purpose of that is to pass stuff through a component, that's where you want to start thinking about that. But until we do a thing on recoil, or you read about Redux, then yeah, then that's fine for now, and it's fine for the code challenge for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
I guess I'll shamelessly fish for hints, uh, because I found the sushi one like significantly more difficult than like the Pokemon and the stocks and even Toy Tail. I almost finished, in an hour just now. So if there's any kind of things that we should look at, especially between now and Thursday.
Mhm. Yeah, my my biggest recommendation, and I think we don't focus on this enough in the curriculum. My biggest recommendation is to think about how you're structuring your data, and especially when we're getting data from a source like we are here, when we're doing a get to get it. Um, it seems really obvious, but there's still choices you can make to make things easier or more difficult. Uh, yeah, well, I think I'll talk about that a little bit. But I think that's one of the biggest things is when you're struggling with like getting something in the right shape or like making something work a certain way. 90% of the time when I find myself in that situation, I go back to what my data looks like. And if I can massage it a little bit or just change the way it's being represented a little bit, sometimes that'll make the logic part so much easier. The general rule is kind of, um, you want to, what's the best way to say this? The You shouldn't be doing too much like logic to the data necessarily. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. If your data is set up the right way, a lot of the fussy stuff kind of goes away. And that's kind of easy and vague to say, but I'll give a concrete example when we go through sushi here.
Yeah. And in that, like when you're saying data like set the right way, are you referring to like the data source that we're fetching from, or like the states and things
Yeah,
and
great question. Now, I think it's because the data that you're getting is the data that you're
and
getting,
it is, yeah.
And if you're, if you're responsible for the full stack, then you have some control over that, but often you don't. And so it's basically, what you're doing with the data that you're getting and how you're storing that. Yeah. Any luck finding the thing you were looking for, Anthony?
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Okay, let's see if I can get the right one. This one? I think it's this one. Boom. So this right here.
Mhm.
And it was just like, originally I wanted to put this like in here or like in like, just like right here instead of like bracketing it.
Can you say a little bit more about that? I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about.
It's like I get like the understanding, but I feel like just trying to like if you told me to just do this out of the blue, I feel like it takes a while just to like kind of break down piece by piece of what like needs to kind of be there to get the functionality of what I want.
So can you talk a little bit about well, what is the functionality that you want to happen there in the first place?
So if it's an empty string, hide it, and if there's something in there, show it. And that's where kind of like if length is greater than 0, then it's coming up and it's popping in the bio. And then yeah, it feels weird.
So let's do me a favor here and let's just kind of break this up a little bit so it's easy to read.
Okay.
Let's put a return right here in front of props. I mean, not a return, a carriage return, so you can see the its own line there.
Huh?
Hit the return button.
Oh, like that.
Let's put another one right here in front of the question mark. And then another one right here in front of the colon. Cool. And you can put one here after the null there too, just to make it even. Cool. And so now we can kind of see. So what we want there is we want to display the bio if there's a bio, basically, right?
Yeah.
So we have our props, we have our bio. So props bio is our thing, and so this curly bracket here, this is what's saying whatever the value of whatever is inside here, whatever the value is, put that in my HTML. And so this is where the the ternary comes in, because again, if then in this context doesn't, or if then anywhere, but importantly in this context doesn't have a return value. So we need to stick to our ternaries. And so basically, what we're looking at is we have, our requirement is a if then proposition, right? If there's stuff, show it. Otherwise, don't show anything. So, and that's where we break it up. So, okay, if there's stuff, great. This is a way to do it. Then, that's going to be our value. Otherwise, we're not going to have a value. And so this is, you're going to use that ternary when you have a choice like that. And sometimes that's, displaying a whole nother, a whole nother component, or passing different things to a component, passing different callbacks to a component sometimes. So, yeah, that's the sort of high level. What particular questions did you have about this here, or what clarifications can we kind of talk about?
I don't know, it's like more like the prop. I feel like I would need like other examples, because it's like I feel like what threw me off is like show it or don't show it.
Mhm.
And there was just how to like implement that in like a good way.
Yeah, and so can you tell me a little bit more about like how, like what part of this makes sense to you and what part is kind of slippery?
It's more like putting the Lego pieces together for a specific functionality.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you said it there. The when you see a proposition that is, display the thing if it's there, that's right in the proposition if, right? And that's half the job of being a developer, I think, is reading requirements and figuring out what it means, and then clearly like what the what the representation of that is going to look like in code. And so I think that what you said is totally right on. Like when you see this or that, or do this if that, that's the perfect place to do a turn error like this in JSX.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does that kind of get at what you're asking?
No, yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's a practice and instinct thing. Once you see it a bunch, it took me a long time to like, get comfortable with doing that. It's like everything else, not intuitive. So practice and getting a feel for it is the best way to do it. Anyone else have any sort of questions along this line or feelings about how this should go or not? Cool. Anything else you want to talk about this?
Nope. That was about it.
Cool. What other questions do we have going in?
Is the code challenge gonna be like this sushi one where all the components are there and you just need to figure out how to get them to work?
Yeah, for the most part.
Or
Let me verify. Let me see what we have here. But yeah, in general, that that is going to be the structure. Most of them, if not all of them, I think, have a lot of the structure built in, and you're kind of filling in the functionality. Yeah. So yeah. So you'll have most of the. Let me verify that. Make sure I'm not lying here. Yeah, so that's like that, that's like that. Yeah, pretty much you'll have that framework, that scaffolding of the components and where they all go. You're just gonna be building out the functionality for them and passing stuff between them.
Yeah.
And I think I think the Sushi Saga is a pretty good representative. I don't think it's going to be exactly the same for the one that we're looking at, but there's definitely a lot of the concepts transfer over. And if you have a good feel for this one, I think you're going to have a good time. The one on Thursday. Awesome. What else? Cool.
Oh, I have a
Yeah.
small question.
Mhm.
So for some reason, good or bad, I get in the habit of like, so I'm like Ryan, right? Like I'll pass, my functions kind of through a bunch of things,
Mhm.
and I'll just call it, the same thing. I'll do like, eat sushi equals eat sushi, and the next one, eat sushi equals, and just do that all the way down. But I've noticed like in the solutions, they'll kind of change the name of things. Is there they might do, at first it's like on sushi click equals eat sushi, and then kind of change the naming throughout.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of developer preference, whatever makes sense to the person that was doing it? Because to me, it makes the most sense to just keep the name the same.
Yeah. Yes, it is developer preference. And this is a kind of a rule to a situation. This is like what makes the most sense and what is easiest to read for you. There, I don't know if we're gonna. There's a code challenge that definitely uses something that is kind of picky about that. But basically, a place where that is going to really matter is if you have a component that can say behave in different ways depending on where it's at. So say we're saying like one of them is, oh, we have a the sushi conveyor or whatever, and when you click it, that will eat it, right? And so when you're implementing that part, you can say, okay, cool, eat sushi equals the function eat sushi. And inside, it's going to say, oh, cool, when you're clicked, call the eat sushi function that you were passed.
Yeah, in the stocks one, it had like you would click it in one location, it would move it to another, and then you click it in location two, and it would remove it from location two.
Yeah, and that's a really good example. So if instead of like eating it, you were just like putting it on your plate, say, and if you wanted to add a click that says remove this, right? Um, the prop inside probably isn't going to be still called eat sushi, right? Because you're otherwise you'd be saying like eat sushi equals remove sushi, right? So in that case, you want to kind of, this is where the sort of semantics come in, that I'm always a stickler for. And so you can call the eat sushi function eat sushi, and you call the remove function remove sushi, but internally you're like, okay, cool. Does this sushi care about whether it's being eaten or removed or added to a shopping cart or ordered or whatever? Internally, it just says, oh, I'm getting some instructions that when I get clicked, I should execute those instructions. So in that case, I would probably call the prop like on clicked or something. And so then when you make it, you say, oh, on click equals eat sushi, on click equals remove sushi, on click equals add to cart, whatever. So internally, it doesn't care. And I'd probably update the name to reflect that. But as you're developing, like if you're just doing the eat sushi one, do it that way. And then only when you get to the point where it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense to call the remove function eat sushi, you can change it because you can just change code whenever you want. It's great. Does that kind of make a little bit of sense there?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Most important thing is make sure it makes sense to you and be willing to change stuff when it stops making sense across the board. Awesome. That's a great question. Anything else before we start looking at some code? Cool. Let me go ahead and share here. One. Let's get you over here so I can see you and hide the controls. Cool. Hey, there's an empty sushi table. Cool. So here is, I don't care about that. Let's take a look at our, actually, let me grab the, this over here. Cool. So this is our stuff. We've got our data, we got our server there. Let's take a look at what we want to do before we jump into it. So we're gonna get it and display it. That should be pretty instinctual by now. Only 4 rendered at a time. We can talk about that. I'm curious about how y'all did that. So clicking the more sushi button shows the next 4. So we're scrolling the list basically, and clicking on the plate will eat it, causing it to be removed and put an empty plate on the table. Oh, yeah, interesting, cool. And we will charge people based on it and make sure that they can't buy stuff if they don't have money. Great. So I'm just gonna move this over here, kind of watch at the same time. Awesome. So let's, I'm gonna kind of blast through the first part because I think mostly have a handle on it. If not, feel free to stop me at any time. So the first part is getting it from our app and displaying it. So let's take a look at what sushi container looks like. So I think that's what we're displaying stuff in. Render sushi components here. So we're going to be using these sushi components, and it looks like they take props and then use that props to fill it in. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and do a use effect in our app. And I'm going to say we're going to get, I'm going to not get, just fetch from our API. Then I'm going to turn it into, I'm going to console log it to make sure everything is working right. See them there. Great. So let's open up our console and make sure everything is working right. 3001. I think it's running on 3000 right here. Oh, I did it manually instead of hitting the right thing. Let's do that. There we go. Okay, we're getting our sushi. So instead of console logging, I'm going to, we need to keep a state because we're changing that state. So I'm going to make a state for sushis. I'm gonna call it sushis because plurals. State. And since we are going to be getting a list of things, my basic state has to be an empty list so things don't freak out. And great. So instead of console log, I'm going to take that data that I got here and I'm just going to say set sushis with that. And so now we should be able to look at our components. And if I did everything right, yeah, we got our sushis in there. Cool. All right. And we're going to just pass that into the sushi container. And you can command click to go to the function or component here. Pretty nice. So I'm going to render my sushi components. Since we have a list of things, props, I'm going to say I want to turn our list of sushi objects into sushi components. Propose props. What do I want to do? Props sushi. Props. I just want to turn these into a sushi. All right. Well, that sushi container, just a sushi. Import that. Map. How about we do a map? Sushi turns into a sushi. Sushi. Starting to not make any sense anymore. Sushi. Cool. Sushi. And we want our key here so it doesn't complain about it. I think they have IDs. Double check. Yeah, we have IDs. And there shouldn't be anything inside, so we can do that. Awesome. We've got, yeah, we need to close up that parentheses there. Awesome. So we should have an error. There we go. So we have a bunch of sushis with nothing in them. Great. And now we just need to get that sushi and display it inside our sushi component. So I'm going to destructure all of our stuff instead of using props dot whatever, props whatever. So let's see what we have in here. Name, image URL, and price. Cool. I think that'll be good. So I'm going to say get name, image, price is underscore, image URL, and price. Great. And so now I can just use those destructured out of the props. Nope, not there though. That's not where I want it. Cool. In the sushi, that's where I want it. Great. So I'm for each sushi, I'm destructuring the name, image URL, and price out of here. And we're also going to need a callback. I'm just going to call it callback right now because we don't have anything. And leave that blank. Tell me if this sushi has been eaten. We don't know yet, so we're just going to display stuff. So I'm going to put the image URL here. Name here. Where are we? There we go. And the details here, the name and the price. It seems like it might work. Let's find out. Nope, not yet. What do we got? Let's take a look at each one we have here. So those all look right.
I think it's, and I did this and it killed me. It was like it's img underscore URL, not the full.
IMG. Look at that.
Yeah, that took me like 90 minutes in itself to figure that out.
Yeah, I need to do up here too. Well, reload. Okay. Image rel. Does the images are they showing up? Yeah, the images are there. Why are we not showing our things here? Let's find out. Oop, there's our tail. Cool. What did we do wrong here? False. No, maybe this false. No, otherwise that. Hmm. Not doing the price either. Let me do this. I don't think console log out. The name image URL.
Did you pass them from the container?
Maybe I did. Let's see. I thought I did. Yeah, sushi equals sushi there. Yeah, we can see them in the there. Come on. It's having trouble loading the tree there for some reason. Why is that? Warnings here. Yep, that's fine. Wasn't hanging up. Interesting. Let's do some debugging.
I think this is similar to what one of my question was like, so we pass in just sushi equals sushi, but then I had to destructure them inside the sushi component.
Yeah, and we didn't have to. We could say, props image URL, props name, props price.
Well, so instead of putting, so I just put sushi in the function sushi, and then I had to do like const curly brackets, all of the
That's
keys.
exactly what I did wrong here.
And that's like, I don't get why I did that, but I did it.
So this is what we're talking about here, right? Image
Yeah.
URL, name, price equals sushi. Cool. So the sushi object is structured like, image URL. Well, I'm not going to type it out because they're right here. So it's name, image URL, price, right? And we don't have to do that here. We can say, sushi name, sushi image URL, sushi price. This is just making it a little bit easier for me to read. And so saying like, we know sushi is structured like this. So we're going to destructure it into these constants. We don't have to do that. We could just easily say sushi.image URL, sushi.name, sushi.name, sushi.price. It's just a little bit nicer to read for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can't you also move that const and put it inside where sushi is too?
Yeah, I could probably put it right there. I don't think we need a constant. I think we just put the curlies in there. I like breaking it out just because it makes it more explicit, I think. Especially if there are, if we have something that has multiple things passed into it, it is a little bit cleaner to my brain. But if you like it in there, that totally works. And I've done this exercise dozens of times, and I think every single time I do that. Cool. There we go. Never learn. So we've got all our sushis here. Great. Cool. So let's do the thing where we only show it for. How about that? So I think there's a couple places I could do that. I think what I'd like to do is do it in, where's the button? There's our more button. Let's do it in here. So right now we're mapping over the entire thing, the entire list of sushis. So we want to only do it for some sushis. And let me think. I'm going to do it here. If we need to change it, we'll change it. So we only want to show a subset, right? And so so before we map over the list, we're going to take just a slice of the list there. Slice. And say we're going to start at 0 and give it is it the end or the number? It's the end. So 4, I think. Slice is one of the things always have to look up. So maybe this will do it. Yeah, there's 4. So slice will take an array and it will return starting at this index and ending before this index. So we're saying take the whole thing, give it just 4, and then we're going to do the same thing we did before, map over it. Any questions about that? Cool. And this kind of ties in with the more button thing. Since we want to move that slice along, kind of, instead of starting at the beginning, we want to move a certain amount along the list. And we can do that just by taking a different slice. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that here. I'm going to do it in a state, I think. I'm going to call it start index. Sure, set start. I'm going to state, and we'll start off at 0. And now I can just put that there and make sure it still works. Great, still works. And so now I can change that number, but I'm also going to need to change this number because that's not the number, it's the index. So I'm going to need to say start index +4. Make sure that still works. Great. And now I can, so if I start at a different one, right now we're at Maguro Sandori. If I start at 1, it'll have Sandori over here. Great. So I can change this index to change the slice that we're looking at. Let's hook up the more button here. So that more button, hey, we're going to need to pass it a click. So I'm going to, I'm going to write a function like that. And I'll call it show more. And I don't think I need to take any arguments because all I'm going to do is set the start index to start index +4. And so that will set the index to the index +4. When that changes, it will re-render and show us the next thing. I have bare numbers here, these numbers 4. I'm gonna put those into a constant. Slice size, call it. And so now I don't have to worry about making a typo or something. Or, if we want to change the slice size, we can change it to 3, and that'll just show 3. Fantastic. And then it should advance by 3. So I'm going to pass that. What's it looking for? Nothing yet. I'm going to say handle click, call it. And we'll pass that into the button. And so this is kind of the naming thing we were talking about before. The button doesn't know about anything outside itself except the thing that you pass in. And so it doesn't care if it's a button being used to show more sushi or refresh the page or delete the user or whatever. All it knows is that, hey, I'm just a little button. It's my birthday and I'm going to do whatever you tell me to. And so I like using a kind of generic name on the inside. So I'm just going to say handle click. Even though it says more sushi here, if this was a more generic button, might pass in a label too, but I'm not going to worry about that. And then out here, I like to use the more specific name because, oh, here's a button and here's what it's going to do. So we know that. I wonder if that's going to work. Let's find out. Should I reload? No, nope, didn't do it yet. Without list of sections. Oh yeah, I need to set my dependencies here. And want to make sure that only happens once. Cool. I don't think that's our problem though. Cool. So let's debug. So the sushi container. I'm gonna console log out the start index here. Yeah, I'm gonna console log out the. So should show 0 here. Great. When I hit more, nothing is happening. Great. So more button, handle click equals show more. There's handle click, on click equals handle click. Fascinating. Is handle click doing anything? Show more, show more. Cool, it's not clicking it. So show more is the name of that. Handle click is the name of my function. More button is here. More button is taking a handle click. The console logout. I mean, it'll show up in the console, but it'll show up in the component inspector if I want to do it here anyway. I see what I did. Anyone see what I did?
Is it a typo?
And a click.
And a click. Handle click. Let's try that again. Handle click. Nope. Jeez. Okay. I'll do it myself. Handle click. Luck. There we go. Cool. So now it's going along the side. And we can see, let's get those consoles out of there. That was wrong. If we change the size here to 3, everything still works. We just had to change that one constant. So cool. So doing this helps avoid typos, which happen as you see, and also lets that be variable. So if we had a drop down, it's like show X number of sushi at a time, we could, instead of using a constant, use that. Cool. So that's the first little chunk. That's mostly the display stuff. I think this the slice and the index thing is the real tricky part here. If any part of this is tricky. Do we have any questions about what we've done here so far? Cool. Sweet. So let's get to the
Actually, really quick, can you just go into the app component
Mhm.
so that I can see? Because I had curly brackets somewhere in my use effect, and I don't know why.
Hmm.
Oh, it's because never mind. I figured it out. It's nothing.
Cool. Awesome. Anything else? Great. So clicking a sushi on a plate will eat the sushi. So let's take a look. Great. Click. On click equals callback. Here, I'm going to name it eat sushi just because that's what we're doing right now. But if I want to change it later, I totally can. Eat sushi. So on click equals eat sushi. That means I'm going to have to pass something in. And this is what you were talking about, passing stuff through, right? Because we're going to be changing the state up here, but the action lives down here. So we kind of have to pass it through. So right here, we're going to say eat sushi. And this is where we want to pass this in here. Call it that. So we call it the same thing. And we're going to have to, I'll just destructure it while we're here. And that means we need to pass it down into the sushi container and define our function. Say console. Cool. So this is kind of what we were talking about before, where we need to manipulate quote unquote state up here at the top, and our thing lives a couple layers down. So we have to pass the function that is doing that down to this container, and this container is passing it down to each one of the things. And then each one of the things is actually doing something. And then when we click it, it calls a thing, and then it calls a thing up top. So all that. We have an error. Props is not defined in sushi container. Yep, you got that right. Sushis. Great. And now see, this is where we had one before, so doing props dot whatever was not a big deal. Well, once I get more than one, I pretty much always destructure stuff just so I don't have to type props whatever a bunch of times. That should take care of that error. Great. What I want to see is some button clicky action. Great. Eat, eat, eat. All right. So our button is hooked up. Now we just need to know what to do with it. So, couple steps here, a couple things we need to think about. First off, we need to know which one is being clicked. That's a great question. And then we need to think about what it means to eat a sushi. So I think some of y'all looked at the solution, which has one way to do it. Did anyone do it a different way? Or what ways have we tried to eat a sushi up here at this level?
What I did is I did all of it in the actual sushi component instead of passing it back up to sushi container.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I passed the money and the money setter down into the sushi, and I changed them there.
Huh, interesting. Um, huh. So tell me if I'm understanding you right. So in here, we just did something to the sushi object and then also called the money setter that changed something up in app. Does that kind of sound like what you did? You're muted if you're talking.
Oh, well, I was.
Oh,
In the sushi component, I passed down the sushi list and then the setter and the current money. And then in there, I set up a function that would make the money go down and remove the image when it got eaten.
So you said you passed the sushi list down to the sushi?
Oh wait, no, just the individual sushi.
Yeah. I have a hunch that that wouldn't do anything if you weren't also changing the money. And the reason for that is because if you're just changing the sushi down here, the state up here doesn't know that you're doing that because you're not actually changing the list. And that's kind of why we want to change. We need to alter our state in the place where it's set. So if we kind of think of it as when we send a prop down, that prop is read only. So we could change stuff inside the sushi object here, but unless something else was causing the app to re-render, that probably wouldn't register, and it might screw up some other stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Did anyone do like eating sushi and so on for a state here?
Unsuccessfully. That was one of my attempts. I tried that route.
Yeah, I see probably like 80% of people who do this, and there's a couple others like this that do that first. And that makes sense. That makes intuitive sense, and gotten it to work. So rule one. I think it's a lot of extra work because you're going to have to find out what sushi it is. You're going to have to take it out of the first one somehow, but we want to show an empty plate, I think. So we don't want to completely remove it, and then we have to add it to there's a lot of stuff, and then we want to make sure it's not already there, and it's a big hassle. So instead, this is the part where thinking about how we're representing our data is going to make our lives easier. So we could make a second array there, and that totally works. And I think I actually did it the first time the very first time I tried this. And it makes sense to us as people, but we want to kind of think about it as computer brains. So thinking about the way React works with data, or maybe not necessarily the way that React works with data, but the kind of idiom that we use it in. And a lot of times when when we're working with lists, there's kind of two ways to approach it. Kind of the outside in, which is kind of what we're doing here, where we're taking our read-only list of sushis and we're taking a slice of it, we're doing a map of it, and that's creating components and stuff down there on a portion of it. If we wanted to, we could, we could sort this, we could filter it, all sorts of stuff. If we want to do a search, we want to filter. If we want to get this one, we'll find all that. So kind of one of the popular idioms of React development is taking a list of stuff and then not mutating it, but operating on it in place to do what we want. And so that's kind of the outside, top down maybe. But we can also kind of do it from the inside out. And this is extra tricky in this one because the data doesn't really support this. If we think about our data, and if this was a relational database, we could not do this way. We would talk to the database administrator and have them change the models. Or if we're working on the back end, we do it ourselves. But if we look at our requirement, right, it's saying clicking on a plate will eat the sushi. So there's two ways to think about it. We can either remove that item from the list somehow, and that's if it's an item sold or whatever. That's not an uncommon thing. And there's two ways we can do that. We can remove the item from the list, or we can mark it sold or eaten or hired or whatever. And so that's sort of like the inside out ways, changing, and that's the more object oriented way kind of to think about it, is changing a property of the object that we're doing. JavaScript is a great object oriented language, no matter what you'll read in phase 3. JavaScript is a better object oriented language than Python, in my opinion. But object orientation is the state of mind. Like you can do it in C where there's no support. So we're thinking about changing the properties of this object to reflect its new state. So I like to add an eaten property here. And again, that's not supported immediately in the data, but since this is JSON, we can add or do whatever we want. So kind of looking down here, tell me if this sushi has been eaten. Okay. I'm going to take that at its word and say sushi eaten? Question mark. So if the sushi has been eaten, question mark, then we don't return anything. Otherwise, we return the sushi. And this is just for the image. So we're still showing the plate and showing the price and name and everything. The only thing that's changing is that if the sushi is eaten, is the sushi eaten, question mark, then we're not going to show the image. Otherwise, we'll show the image. And what that means is that this eat sushi has to change, because we're not just saying, hey, we're going to eat the sushi. We need to change that state of that sushi, which means we need to know which sushi it is, which means that we can't just call eat sushi by itself here. We can't just pass that function as a prop or as a, you can't just call that as a callback. We need to change the way we're doing this. And I think the way I like to do it, there are many ways to do it. Sometimes I like taking the ID, but often, we're just passing up a reference anyway, which is just a number under the hood. So I'm not averse to getting a whole sushi object here. Then say, eating sushi.name. And that means we need to figure out a way to call this down here with that. And so instead of just passing the function itself, I'm actually going to use an arrow function to say, call this whole function, which is then calling eat sushi with the sushi that was passed in. So this is our callback, and the callback is using the function that we passed in to call it with that sushi. Let's see if that does anything. Hey, that works. Cool. And then this is a little bit tricky, I think. Does this not make sense to anybody?
I guess it makes sense. I did it a little differently where I called on click equals and then did like a separate handler function.
Yeah, you could
Pulled
definitely
out.
do that.
Is it kind of the same thing? Just I don't know.
Yeah,
I like pulling the functions out.
call it whatever. Eat sushi, and then call it eat sushi in here, and then we can just pass that function in here. So those are functionally identical, and they're both totally fine, whichever way makes more sense to your brain. Cool, yeah. Any other thoughts or comments about this bit here? Awesome. So we've got it. We know which sushi is being eaten. So now we just need to, up here, do the thing. And I passed the sushi up here because if I just pass the ID, then we can do sushis.find blah, blah, blah ID. It's no less efficient to do it this way. So it just feels like it makes more sense in my brain. Again, whatever works for you is good. So now we're going to need to do this. So we kind of asserted down here that the sushi will have an eaten property. So let's go about doing that. And this is one of the only like really gross pieces of code I think that exists, not that exists, that is commonly used in Python, or not in Python, geez, even grosser in Python, in React, is kind of using this sort of spready, mappy operator thing to change one item in a list. Because remember, we can't just say, oh, sushi.eaten equals true. That's not gonna change anything because it's not re-rendering, because we're not changing anything. We're not changing any state. So we need to replace this, and we want to replace it with a we want to replace it with the exact same list, only the sushi that we are working with has its eaten property set to true. So let's do this in a couple steps. So I'm going to say, const new sushis. This is going to be, it's going to be an object one way or the other. Or it's going to be an array one way or the other. And then I'm going to say, set sushis to new sushis. Great. So what goes in this list? At the very least, it's going to have all the things that currently exist in sushis. So I'm going to spread that sushis out. Great. How do we change one of them without kind of polluting our state? Because remember, we don't want to directly change stuff that's in here. Not only because things could potentially get wonky down the road, but also if we want to use for this, doesn't really make a difference, but in a real application, we're gonna probably use developer tools, and we can like step back and forth in state with developer tools. It's really cool. And if we change something about a previous state and then step back, that is not going to be what it was before. So we always want to replace it with a brand new copy without altering it. So we could say like, oh, sushi.eaten equals true. That sushi is going to exist here, and then we can just spread it out. And I bet that's going to work. Maybe not. Nope, it's not defined. I'm like 75% sure this will work. Yeah, that will work. Do not do that. That's gonna cause you heartache down the road. Because although we are changing something in there, the reason it's refreshing is because we're replacing that value. So we want to, instead of just replacing it with the current one, we want to replace it with the current one, only one of them's changed. So instead of using the spread operator here, I'm going to, if we want to change an array into an array with the same number of elements, but something has changed, I'm going to go ahead and map it. And that means I'm going to have to use a word besides sushi here. So I'm just going to say S. So I'm going to turn each piece of sushi into something else. So let's think this through. If the sushi is not the one we're looking at, we don't want to change it at all. So we know that it's the one we're working at by checking IDs, I guess. So we can say if the one we're iterating over, if the ID of that one is not equal to the one that we're looking at, then we can just replace it with question mark. Is the one that we're looking at the same one as the one that is passed there? If it's not, then we're just going to return that one. And again, that's not perfect. In a real app, you would probably do something more like that. But for our purposes, that is totally fine. So otherwise, we want to replace it with one that has it changed. And that's where we'd probably use our spread here. So we're going to make a new object with the same things in it. Only we're going to say eaten is true. So let's break this down a little bit. And this is kind of gross. In the real world, there are libraries to help you with stuff like this. So just to kind of talk through it again, we don't want that. Great. So get some more space around that. So when we eat a sushi, we are given a sushi object. We want to replace the state with a new list that is the same, except for the one object that we're working on is replaced with one that has eaten as true. And so to create that list, we're going to take our current list, and we're not going to make an array of it. We're just going to map it. We're going to take it and we're going to map over it, creating a new array with the same number of elements, except one is changed. And so for each element, we're going to check to see if that element's ID is the same as the ID of the one that we're working on. If it's not, if they don't match, if it's not the one that we're working on, then we're just going to return that one back unchanged. If it is the one that we're working on, then we're going to replace it with a new object that has all the current properties except for eaten equals true. And then once we've set that, we're going to put it in the new state. Before we talk through it, let's see if I'm lying or not. Hey, that still works. Great. More sushi. Great, that works. Cool. And we should be able to see in our components if it loads. Oh, buddy, why? Well, if this was loading, we should be able to see in there that they are true. I wonder why it's not loading. That's so weird.
Mine does that a lot too. I just have to like refresh the page. I don't know why.
Maybe it's a function of, no, I don't know. You have to do a shift refresh. No, interesting. Troubleshooting instructions. Suck it up, it sounds like. Okay, cool. Well, in theory, we should see that. And we are seeing that behavior. So that should work. So questions about this gross little piece of code?
I got one that kind of popped up,
Mhm.
but I'm going through my head, but could you use a filter here instead, or would that shift the array and just hide the one you clicked
So
on?
the filter would give us a subset, and it wouldn't change any elements in it. So filter is probably not what we want there. Yeah. And then in a real situation, in a real situation, we'll have a library that does this. What's it called? The there's a really good one I like. React. What's it called? I can't remember. I can't remember. It's really good though. But that'll do like once you get into like nested objects and objects of arrays of objects and stuff, this kind of thing, you can still do, but it gets a little bit messy. I think it's starts with a vowel. Can't remember. Starts with a vowel, sounds German, but it's not. But anyway, for simple cases, this is totally great. And I will generally just put that right here. But this is how we do it for the moment. Get comfortable with this, or as comfortable as you can. It's it takes some thinking through, and it really takes understanding how all the bits and pieces work. But again, practice is the way to do it. Yeah, and again, this is not the only way to do it. It is a way to do it. We're a little bit over. I don't want to keep you too long. Let's take a look at the last requirement, which is to no, not me. So we want to check the money. When it's eaten, we want to charge, and I count that as part of the same. We're going to display the number. We're going to start with some number, and we're going to reduce that number. Display here. So cool. That's going to say dollar signs remaining. Great. So I think this is a fantastic place for a state. Called budget. We'll say $100. Why not? And we'll display that budget in the table. Great. We'll say budget equals budget. And that just means we need to, this is some magic here. It's fun. We just need to pass the budget in here and call it here. Budget. So that should display 100. Yeah. And now all we do, you know what? We already know which sushi is being passed up because we've done this before. We thought ahead. So now we just need to do two things here. We need to change the budget. And this is the part where, like, if we changed stuff in the sushis without replacing it, and we changed the budget as well, it would still kind of work, but not for the right reason. So that's something to be careful about. But yeah, so our budget, and we have our sushi price or cost price. So our sushi price. So we can say, if our, let's do both things at once. If our budget minus the sushi price is greater than 0, right? Greater than or equal to 0, I guess, because we want to be able to run ourselves out. So if the budget minus the sushi price is greater than 0, is that the right logic? That sounds right. Then we'll do this. Cool. I'm going to pull this back up onto one line just for reading's sake. Great. So if the budget is, or another way to say it is, if the budget is greater than or equal to the sushi price, maybe that's an easier way to read. We have the money for it, so we will reduce our budget by that amount. And we'll do that by setting the budget with state. And we will do our updating the sushis just like before. And if it's not, we won't do either of those things. So does this work? We want to be 80, and we want to be 60, 65, 10, 30, great. 25, can we get anything else? Oh, no, we can't. Is there any cheap sushi down here? Any cheap $5 sushi? No. Oh, well. Leave a tip. That didn't, the plates. we need to pass in the sushi list. And basically, plates is literally just an array that is the same. It's done weird here. I would not do it this way. Um, it's such a weird way to do it, but basically it just means we need to say plates. And I'm just gonna say equals. So we need to pass it in an array that is equal to the number of things that we have eaten. And this is fantastic because we have, and I know why it did this because it makes you do this instead of passing something else. Um, I'm going to filter. So this is going to pass in an array that is just the number of sushis, that is just the sushis that are eaten. And so now, boom, boom, is it doing it? Oh, it's not doing anything. What did I do wrong? Table plates. Oh, nothing is working at all. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Hey, there we go. Just need to reload. And so yeah, this is, does it say it in the README? It appear, yeah, it didn't say how. So to do this one, you have to look at the table, and then either figure out what this does or read the comment, and just say plates, for every thing in that array, put a plate on the table, and it does that through magic CSS stuff. So the only really important thing is here that we're passing in an array that is the size of the that an array that has all of the eaten sushis in it. And since we've set a property on there, we can just use a filter. Yeah, yeah. So that's the money. Pretty straightforward, I think, if you've got everything else. Yeah, that's that. And that's pretty much it. This was, kind of a whirlwind tour, I think. And again, this is one way to do it. I've done this one a bunch of times, so it seems easy. Once you've done this a dozen times, it will seem easy to you. And this is just like the way that I found is effective for me. If you do it differently and it works, that's great. But yeah, I think this exercises all the things you will need to know for the code challenge. I don't think the code challenge is as difficult as this. So I think this is good, training for a marathon with weights on kind of deal. So that said, what questions do we have about all the stuff we just did? Are we just overwhelmed? Cool.
I have one thing about the
Go for it.
Chrome extension
Yeah.
for React. I downloaded it and set it up, and it's not there. Like if I go to developer tools, there's no components tab thing.
Huh. Fascinating. If you go to your extensions, it shows up here.
Yeah, React developer tools is there,
Huh.
and it's on.
And it's turned on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. Cool. Interesting. It's not giving you any errors or anything.
No, it's just not there. I don't know.
Huh. That is a problem. Oh, hey, look at that. Maybe we need to restart Chrome. I'm not gonna do that because I have a ton of tabs open. Interesting. Maybe you need a restart.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, otherwise we'd have to troubleshoot that. Good catch. Good find. Probably want to update it too, but interesting. Cool. Sweet. Yeah. Give it a restart. If you can't get it to work, we'll see what we can do.
Cool.
Cool. I feel like that's enough for our brains today. Um, any questions about anything we've done here, detailed or theoretical? Cool. Sweet. So build and burn, practice, just understand all the pieces you're doing. If if you have questions, give me a holler and we'll talk through it some more. Otherwise, I'll put this video up on the playlist and in the channel. And yeah, we'll see you at stand down. Have I keep you through lunch? Oh man, did. So yeah, have a good rest of the day. I'll see you in just a little bit. Like we're hanging out.